Thank you, Meryl, and thank you for being such a wonderful host. I am delighted to welcome you all again to day 2 of C3 Transform to talk about the C3 AI product roadmap and the ongoing innovation. And I'd like to start by talking about the product portfolio and why it exists. $15.7 trillion will be AI's contribution to the global economy. Now, much of this is going to be captured in the enterprise segment. But how is it going to be captured? It's going to be captured through high-impact business use cases across a range of industries, from industrial manufacturing to oil and gas to retail to healthcare. But how does an organization really take advantage of that? It's large, it's substantial, but what are you supposed to do? Well, how would one large manufacturer in industrial manufacturing think about it? They're going to think about business use cases across their value chain that are going to drive improvements in production quality, increase in supply chain resilience, and improvements in operational excellence. And this can generate, just for that one organization, $1.5–2 billion in annual economic benefit. In oil and gas, global energy leaders can get even more value, $6–7 billion, thinking about use cases that will drive safe, reliable, and sustainable operations across the value chain, from upstream to midstream to downstream to retail. In financial services, $3.5 billion in ongoing economic benefit through enterprise AI use cases that will focus on compliance and pricing, customer engagement, in order to drive business outcomes for increased customer satisfaction, for new revenue streams, and reduce regulatory risk exposure. In healthcare, multiple billions of dollars in annual value through use cases that accelerate R&D cycles, that streamline operations, and importantly, improve patient outcomes. And so you think about all of these use cases across all of these industries, and every organization needs to be identifying many opportunities and use cases to deploy in order to gain benefit from enterprise AI. So the value promise is real, and it's clearly very substantial. But as we've learned, it's actually quite fraught with risk to get from value promise to value realization unless you have the right approach. And so we've spent 15 years working with organizations across a range of industries to understand both what are the common pitfalls that organizations end up running into, and then we've architected our product portfolio in order to address all of those, to get value fast, to get value at massive scale. So let's talk about those challenges first. Picking the right use case or right use cases is by far and away among the most important. And if you don't, many organizations tend to fall away in their ability to deliver value because they don't pick one that's the business real pain point. So there's poor organizational alignment. Could be a technology problem versus an actual business problem. Or maybe they select a problem that just does not have a tractable AI solution, or it doesn't have ongoing and meaningful value contribution to the business. But even if you do that right, the next two challenges often trip organizations up and cost time and internal credibility, because even if you choose the right use cases, if you don't have the foresight and technology architecture to do this in a way that scales and is repeatable, you're likely to end up with custom builds everywhere. And managing that and maintaining that is extremely costly and complex. So repeatability, what does that mean? Imagine you have a demand forecasting AI use case for one business unit. You're getting value from it. You've architected, you're using it. You now want to move it to the next business unit. Maybe you're going from North America to EMEA. Now, if you do not have the right approach, you may not be leveraging the same workflows, the same application capabilities, the logic, the analytics, and you're doing that from scratch again. So you have very little overlap. What we really want to be able to do is just point to a new ERP instance, train a new model, and onboard new users. It needs to be fast, and it needs to be faster as you continue to move on to new business units. That's repeatability. Now, even when you succeed in doing that, a lot of companies then struggle with the next one, which is scalability across use cases. So you started with a demand forecasting use case, great. Maybe you got it across multiple business units, even better. But now you want to do CRM opportunity management with an AI-based use case. And if you're not leveraging all of your common data foundation, all of your common analytic foundation, and all of your common workflow foundation, AI ML foundation, you're not likely to gain benefits. And so what ends up happening is it becomes very hard and virtually impossible to manage multi-use case, enterprise-wide AI systems. And so we've lived these challenges for 15 years for customers of all sizes and all manner of industry. So we recognize that need for a fully unified product portfolio for an enterprise-wide, enterprise-hardened, proven AI platform for building, deploying, and operating AI at scale. And that's actually really interesting. So imagine you're a healthcare company or a financial services organization. With the C3 approach, you're getting the benefits of what our industrial manufacturers are taking us into, our oil and gas customers are pushing us with, because it's the same product approach, same product getting deployed for everybody. We also recognize what the applications that we offer need to provide as the right use cases, the ones that will have sustaining value, high value impact to the business. We also recognize what an AI application actually means. So let's talk about that for a second. First, it needs to have common foundational data model that represents all of your data into common business concepts, customers, orders, products. On top of that, you need industry extensions that then codify your data into the language of your business. When you speak to each other in the boardroom, in your normal weekly meetings, you're not talking about tools and the details therein. You're talking about the language of your business. So why shouldn't your applications do the same? So that's how we enable the developer, the data scientist, the end user, the analyst to all engage and talk about the language of the business through industry extension data models. Then you need hardened application logic that say, if I'm going to bring in all of these data across all of these sources, how can I do complex aggregations for hierarchies, stored calculations, batch and stream processing, caching, and how does that ensure an ongoing performance system? How do I bring in the best of breed capabilities for AI, machine learning, deep learning, optimization techniques? Because what's really important is that you take advantage of the right analytic use capability for the right use case and be able to quickly compose and iterate the right technical approaches and be able to deploy that at scale. Then you've created your AI insights. Now you need to put it into a business process workflow. You need to have all of your users engaged in their normal business process, and you need to fit all of those capabilities into that business process. So you need to have alert and case management. You need to have multi-level approvals. And then you need to expose all of those through configurable charts and reporting and UI components and dashboards. You need to enable access controls. So you apply then all of these things for one application. Now you need to have all of those applications run on a single platform in order to make it scalable, and you need to have easy-to-use tooling in order to extend that. Because what's also important is that you need to be able to take advantage of what already exists and then extend on top of it and ensure that you have full backwards compatibility. So that's what we think of as an enterprise AI application that delivers significant business value for all users at speed and at scale. Now, many other vendors will talk about what they think is an AI application, and honestly, it's usually not this whole list. It's often one or two layers. They might have an ontology and an industry data model, and then they're custom building the rest through services on top and through tools. Or they might have one or two other layers, but they're not enterprise AI applications, and they certainly don't scale, and they certainly are not repeatable. And so we've come through this approach, and we recognize that our approach, and we believe, is the only one that is a fully unified product portfolio to address all of these core challenges: value, speed, and scale. And so we've built a purpose-built, hardened enterprise AI platform with rich low-code and no-code tooling, a library of industry-specific AI applications, and a new enterprise user experience powered by Gen AI. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about what those applications are and actually take you through a few of the customer case studies that are using them to get substantial value. I'll anonymize those customers for the stage, but they're all here at C3 Transform. So let's start by talking about the applications and the way in which we organize. We organize them into interoperable product suites. So starting with C3 AI Supply Chain Suite, what we offer is the ability to monitor the entire supply chain for impending risks and enable an efficient and resilient supply chain management system. So demand planners can look at the entire supply chain and receive precise forecasts at any level or any combination of hierarchy, SKU, location, customer, or any combination thereof that supports the business need. Inventory managers can right-size work-in-progress goods, parts, raw materials, finished goods inventory at each location, and do that ongoing as demand signals and as supply signals change. Production planners take advantage of optimal schedules, detailed schedules. What should I make on which line, at which time, with which shift, with which equipment? And do that across the long horizon, accounting for millions of variables. And sourcing managers can reduce costs for millions of purchase order lines. And so one $40 billion heavy industry manufacturer is taking advantage of C3 AI supply chain applications to enhance demand visibility and streamline production scheduling. And collectively, we're targeting $50 million in annual economic benefit from these deployments alone when deployed at scale. C3 AI Reliability Suite helps identify unplanned downtime, increase production, and increase energy efficiency by arming teams with AI insights and workflows to drive operational excellence. And specifically here, we've actually been spending a lot of time in enabling the scale of these applications in the Reliability Suite to be deployed quickly and at very massive scale. And now, for a large, significant manufacturing plant, we can deploy the C3 AI Reliability Suite in a matter of weeks for dozens of really complex assets that have thousands of sensors, and for fleets of assets that might themselves have thousands of sensors, that might number in the thousands of themselves. And we can do that in a matter of weeks. And so one global energy leader has taken advantage of the C3 AI Reliability Suite to get multiple percentage points increase in production. Now that is substantial, and they get significant carbon savings as well. And so for each facility, they're getting tens of millions of dollars in annual economic benefit. Now roll that out across dozens. The C3 AI Sustainability Suite helps support sustainability teams with enterprise AI capabilities to manage direct and indirect emissions, set sustainability goals, and implement net zero objectives. And we do that through integration and representation of all manner of enterprise data, external data, and deconstruct all of those into what we call ESG bits, which are the representations of all of those data into common concepts for emissions, or for water management, or for labor relations or DEI approaches. And then we can reconstruct all of those to map to the core and ever-evolving regulatory standards. Because as they change, we need to leverage our data and our external systems to both understand those changes and then constantly be able to meet the expectations of our stakeholders. And then we provide a series of reporting and automation workflows and ESG materiality assessments in order to provide support for those teams. And so one large $15 billion industrial manufacturer takes advantage of the C3 AI Sustainability Suite to gain $60 million in cumulative savings across 5 years. In state and local government, we focus on law enforcement. We focus on property appraisals. We're improving public safety. We're managing the efficiency of property appraisals across counties. And we do so in order to serve constituents better. In C3 AI Law Enforcement, you might have a series of enterprise data all brought together, contextualized with external sources of information. But then the sheriff, the field officers, the investigators have only access to the data they need. But you're using and taking advantage of a really sophisticated data fusion capability, all deployed on a single instance. Now, you do that for users, but now you think about the agency. So a geographical area has not only counties and county sheriffs, but also has municipal police departments and many other agencies. How can they all take advantage and leverage the single unified data image and all the analytics, but get access to the workflows and the data that they have jurisdiction and access to? Now you do that for one county and its municipal police departments. Now you can scale that across the United States for 3,000 counties, 19,000 municipalities, and beyond the United States as well. And so one large US county is taking advantage of C3 AI law enforcement to reduce the investigation time for 16 agencies by 8-fold, and taking advantage of C3 AI property appraisal to gain $15 million in appraisal efficiencies across 200,000 properties. In defense and intelligence, we have a series of AI applications that support critical use cases in contested supply chain management, in commanders' dashboards, in all-domain command and control. And so we bring together intelligence sources, operational data, imagery, sensor information into a common unified model and fusion pipelines and entity resolution capabilities to deliver mission-critical use cases and applications. And we deploy these in the most controlled and classified environments. And so many groups within the US Department of Defense take advantage of the products to get early warning for risks, to reduce the analysis time, and to lay a foundation for precision decision-making on the battlefield. And then with generative AI, we're enabling the users to interact with the AI insights in a new and intuitive way. Rapid access and information stored across your disparate systems for a variety of use cases of operator assistance, supply chain visibility, customer service management, commodities trading, and more. You've heard a lot about this already. You'll continue to hear about it. And one global law firm is taking advantage of this to do due diligence reports. So normally, these things require multiple weeks of work from an associate who themselves has 2.5 years of tenure within the law firm. Now, within a matter of seconds, you can get a due diligence report that's at least 80% accurate, and you can go from there. So the speed and scale really improves. And so underpinning C3 Generative AI, the C3 AI applications, is the C3 AI platform, a unified end-to-end development and operating platform for high-value, mission-critical enterprise AI applications. It provides comprehensive tooling for the entire enterprise AI development lifecycle and operating lifecycle. Comprehensive suite of machine learning tools for data scientists, a cohesive enterprise application development experience for developers, release and ongoing monitoring security frameworks for IT teams, all brought together, all unified. It also has a vibrant developer community, rich library of resources for onboarding and ongoing support, and a generative AI-powered community assistant for rapid access to knowledge. And the version 8 platform that we talked to you about on this stage a year ago is now in many of your hands, and we've heard your extremely positive feedback. What it offers is a step function improvement in performance and speed and efficiency, 20x faster to integrate data, to infer time series features, to train machine learning models. And now you can have thousands of AI applications all deployed on a single cluster, millions of models to get to really and truly scalable AI deployments across your enterprise. And our 15 years of investment across this product portfolio has been recognized by the market. #1 in AI ML platforms from Forrester. Constellation Research for data science and machine learning cloud platforms. LNS Research, industrial transformation platforms. IDC, digital solutions and energy. And our customers are winning awards. Baker Hughes for ESG and sustainability. San Mateo County for smart cities. Georgia Pacific for operational risk management. Roche. And so many of the customers here today are leveraging C3 AI products to meet and exceed their business goals at speed and at scale. One such organization is Baker Hughes. And so I'd like to invite to the stage Jim Apostolides, Senior Vice President of Enterprise Operational Excellence, to talk more about what Baker Hughes has been doing, their approach, and the value realization that they've received. Jim? Jim, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Let's just dive right in. Maybe you could first tell us a little bit about Baker Hughes for those who don't already know it.
So Baker Hughes is a $25 billion energy technology company with operations in over 120 countries, 55,000 employees plus. And really what we're trying to solve as an organization is the energy trilemma around energy security, sustainability, and affordability. And we have two main segments around oil field services and equipment, in industrial and energy technology, where we have things like turbines, compressors, sensors, oil field service equipment that's in the field working with our customers to help solve their problems and to make sure that they can operate in an efficient manner.
So Baker Hughes takes advantage of C3I supply chain applications, inventory optimization, sourcing optimization, and you were here on this stage a year ago talking about where you've been and where you'd plan to go in the next year. Can you tell us about what's happened in that intervening year?
Sure. So, we talked a lot last year about inventory optimization and sourcing optimization. And I'd like to share with you some of the results that we executed in the last 12 months. And to illustrate the level of say-do ratio that we executed as a team. And we talk about site deployments, we talk about users, inventory managed, and acceptance. And you can see that we've exceeded our objectives over the last year. But one thing I want to illustrate and articulate is that, and you talked about it earlier in terms of the scaling, if I look back to where we were at the end of 2021 on some of these numbers that are up on this slide, we only had 5 sites that were in inventory optimization. So a 5x increase over 2 years. We had $73 million of inventory in the IO application. Now we have about 500. And the most interesting to me is there's a little 50% there that has on this slide. And what that represents is how many of the recommendations were automatically accepted without any human intervention. That number at the end of 21 was 3%. 3%, and it's over 50. And what I'm most proud of is the team has come together to deliver those results. And if I think about the actions that we've taken over the last year, the benefits that we've had about $17 million of inventory parameter improvement through IO. If you think about the volatility that we had in the supply chain through COVID, safety stocks went up, reorder points went up, all the things that try to build some supply chain resilience. And we had $17 million reduction on a $500 million balance. So very proud about the progress we made in inventory optimization. If I think about sourcing optimization, similar story. I mean, we really came out, executed what we said we were going to do, huge amount of growth. I'm really excited about this one, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But once again, back at the end of last year, we had probably 30 sites on sourcing optimization. Now we essentially have all of our sites, okay? The second thing is we had about $175 million of purchase orders that were ingested in the system. Right now we have $8 billion. Essentially, once again, the whole company, the enterprise. And then the final piece is the open purchase order lines. We estimated we would have about 700,000. But what we didn't estimate is all the historical data that we were going to feed into the system for us to be able to drive the learning of the models. And we have over 10 million in there. So very pleased with the results we've had here, through the last year and really continued success, both on the value side and the adoption side.
And I think everyone here would agree. It's extremely impressive. What do you think contributes to that faster and larger value realization?
Look, I think you talked about it earlier. I think one is the platform itself has the scalability that a lot of other tools wouldn't have, right, and systems. I think the second thing is we picked the right stuff. I think that we collectively looked at what are the things we're trying to solve as a business. And we said, from an inventory and sourcing standpoint, these are things that can change the way we operate. And the third thing is, look, I think the level of learning that we've all continued in this last 3 or 4 year journey, whether it's ourselves, learning how to use the tool more effectively or ask things in the right way. But at the end of the day, I think that you can see that collaboration and the picking the right use cases in conjunction with the systems are the biggest three drivers.
And I know you're particularly passionate about the sourcing optimization use case and sourcing in general. Can you explain a little bit why and what it means for your business?
Yeah, look, so when I think about the volatility that's happened and will continue to happen in the supply chain in the years to come, we have to make sure that we're not distracted with various fulfillment or other resilient type things that can come up from a supply chain perspective. We still have to deliver cost out, right? And then the second thing is, we have a demographic, and many industrial companies have, is an aging workforce. And we have a tremendous amount of expertise that's been developed over decades to do things like sourcing. And I remember when I was a buyer, the preparation that went involved to ensure that you're driving the right dialogue with the suppliers, prepared with the right information, so you can win the negotiation, all those types of things. And it takes time. When you think about how do you arm a 3 to 5 year employee with the knowledge and the information of a 20 to 30 year service vet, that's a game changer. It helps us go faster. It helps us make sure we're talking about the right things. And it really helps us drive costs out for the company. And with some of the volatility that we're going to have in the supply chain, which is inevitable, in lieu of us letting things like negotiations or cost out go to the wayside because you're chasing parts or trying to get your customers up and running, you can do it more effectively and not lose that efficiency game. So I'm really excited about what this can bring to us, not only today but tomorrow, with all the developments we'll work on as a team.
Yep. Speaking of team, can you talk a little bit more about that? What does it mean to be a collective team, both internally within Baker Hughes to get this done, and then with partner like C3?
I'll think about it, one, from a Baker Hughes perspective, and then bring it up a level between our teams. One is, Jeff Leese, who's our CIO, is with me here, obviously, at the event. We're arm in arm, right? And what we talk about as a team, from an operational perspective and IT perspective, how do we build digital dexterity in the organization? So how do our operations teams know how to speak the language of systems? And how do our IT teams learn how to speak the language of operations? And by doing so, the amount of value and speed in which you solve problems rises exponentially. And when I think about it from a C3 perspective, it's the same thing. I mean, we come from an operational perspective, from a Baker Hughes standpoint, how we're going to use the applications, how we're going to generate value, and then from a technical standpoint, hey, this is how we would have to build it. And I think together we've built digital dexterity. I think you all have become more operational, working with customers, not only us, but other customers. And we've become more technical to make sure that we ask for the right things that can ensure we can leverage the platform which you have. So I think that that collaboration is huge. And I'll give you one little anecdote, and it just shows you the commitment that C3 has as we try to drive this. We're coming out with the version 8 of sourcing optimization. Some new enhancements are coming out in the next month. And we get together every week and look at the project. And the purpose of that is to ensure that stuff doesn't get stuck in the bureaucracy of our organizations. And it ensures that we solve problems at pace. We recognize that we had some challenges on the schedule, probably 30 days ago. And the team said, look, we're going to get 10 people dedicated to this on the C3 side. Jim, we ask you that you send some people to Redwood City so we can be face-to-face and work through this. 2 days later, I have a picture from Adrian on my phone with a group of people just hammering out issues to make sure we collectively hit this date and generate value as quickly as possible. To me, that's partnership.
Absolutely. Now, most of the audience here would love to be able to be on stage and talk about these types of results and value realization exceeding their projections. What additional lessons learned do you have for them?
Look, I think the first thing, and I mentioned about the frequency in which we meet, it has to come from the top. You have to have a vision that says, we're going to do this, we're going to learn from it, but we're not going to waver. And especially in some of your organizations that are large, you can't delegate this stuff. The bureaucracy will prevent it from going at pace. The second thing is you can have a strong team on it. some of the team members here. I know Sarah runs our sourcing optimization platform. David, from an IT perspective, make sure that we're sending the information over in the right way. You have to have an A team working on this every day in and day out. And you have to make sure that you're working with the SMEs to make sure that things are going to be consumed and generate value at the point of use. You can't sit 3 or 4 or 5 levels above where the work happens, just assume it's going to work without their engagement. And one of the things I'm most proud of this year, I met with the supply chain leader for one of the tier 2 businesses that has IO rolled out. And when I met with him, I asked him how things were going, and he said, look, I just got to tell you, he said, we're getting pushed on cost. And the general manager of the business said, what is this for? Why do we spend money on this? Do we getting value? And he said, no. This is our system. This is how we run the business. It's no different than Oracle, SAP, et cetera. It's embedded. And when I heard that, what that told me was it's really an operational tool in the organization, and it's been embedded to where if we step away, it's going to continue its life. And I think that as leaders, that has to be your ultimate objective. To make sure this stuff scales. And I'd say, look, the other thing is don't underestimate the change management that's involved with it, and pick the right use cases. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I mean, there was one use case that we started probably 2 years ago. We tried it for 6 months, and we said, look, it's not what we thought it would be, not from a technical or a platform perspective, but the problem we were trying to solve internally wouldn't be able to be addressed. And we brought the team together and we said, look, this isn't a reflection of you. This is a celebration. We learned that we should spend time on something else. And we doubled down on sourcing optimization. So it's something that you just have to continue to have the stamina and the faith that at the end of the day, this is going to make your company better. And you have to be a big leader to be able to navigate through the complexity of it.
Well, I think that's a great lesson for everybody. Lastly, what innovation are you most looking forward to, and how is it going to permeate the business?
Look, so 2 things. One is just to have the two applications continue to generate value for us and really watch them scale. The second thing is from a sustainability perspective, I think that whole suite is very interesting to us, and seeing how that can evolve with all the reporting requirements that are coming out of Europe. And then yesterday, I believe the SEC came out with some additional requirements in the US, is how do we make sure we're proactive with that and use tools like this to be able to, meet the obligations, create a competitive advantage. The final piece is the generative AI. I believe the last page that I had in my presentation last year was about generative AI and what could it bring. And what I'll say is we're using, from an HR perspective, how do you have HR always on versus having to call the help desk for something? And the level of accuracy that we've experienced in Gen AI in that first use case, and the low level of hallucinations is just super encouraging. And I think that we're in such early stages here, but I'm tremendously excited about what it's going to bring us over the next several years to help propel us to the future.
Jim, as always, I appreciate your time. I know the audience does as well. Thank you. So I'd like to piggyback on that and talk a bit more about product innovation. Now, I'm not going to be able to do justice to everything. You heard from the product breakouts yesterday in the AI marketplace across the roadmap and the innovation of the platform, the applications, C3 Generative AI. You're going to hear more today in the industry breakouts as well. But I just want to cover a couple of thematic things that are going on. But I also want to first say that our product development approach for development and innovation really focuses on ensuring that we deliver high-value business use cases at rapid speed and at massive scale. And so as C3 Generative AI is reshaping everything, it's the theme of the conference, the C3 product suite is no exception. We've been working tirelessly over the last year, and you heard from Nikhil Krishnan in terms of all the development that's gone into the C3 Generative AI product and the deployments and engagement from our customers. I also want to take you through how it's embedding itself through the rest of the product portfolio. So let's talk about it in the context first of applications specifically. How does it take advantage of those? So how many of you start your week or end your week with questions like, what is our on-time and full performance for key customers? Or are we on track to meet our working capital goals? Or maybe you're asking questions like, will we hit our emissions reduction target this quarter? Or have there been any near-miss safety incidents in the last month? You'll ask your teams, and they'll go and bring you back an answer, and how long does it take? Hours? Probably not. Days? Maybe. Weeks, possibly. And when you have a follow-up, how long does it take? And then what are they doing? They're going and asking the same question of all of their systems, all of their sources, all of their reports, all of their publications, and then trying to pull it all together, perform analysis, and put a narrative on top. And that takes time. Now, imagine if you could ask that same question and get a context-specific answer in natural language in seconds that takes advantage of all of those sources, but then critically also does it in the language of your business, in the language of your business process that understands how you do it, and takes advantage of all of your analytics, all of your machine learning models, your predictions, your existing reports, your visualizations. And then, what if it was just you asking it, your colleague asking it, each of you have access to slightly different sets of information, you see what you need. And so we think about how that approach scales and then how that applies using the most simplest interface. So it's the simplicity of the C3 Generative AI interface on top of that rich sophistication I talked about in terms of the applications of the enterprise platform that we think is going to drive the transformation of the human-computer interface. So you can ask that question, will we get to our reduction target this quarter? Or your sustainability manager can ask a question like summarize the recent changes in stakeholder concern for water issues and receive a result that summarizes for investors and NGOs, they seem to think that water withdrawal is increasing relative to everything else. Now, critically, it's not just that you have an answer for the external. How are we doing? You can ask the question as a follow-up based on all of my operational information. What is our performance relative to those expectations, relative to those concerns? We can see that we're improving across time. This is based on all of those data being aggregated. And then you say, hey, how about draft me a short report? I want to publish this. Get me something and use generative AI to create this for me. Or maybe you're a property appraiser in a county assessing home values, and you want to understand which neighborhoods are forecasting tax roll decreases. And so you find out not only the specific areas and neighborhoods that have issues, but then you can find additional sources of information, rich visualizations and analytic capabilities, and then ask a question like, well, within that region, within that neighborhood, which parcel should I be looking at next? And then as you go through, you get taken to a specific workflow to actually perform that appraisal and take it through its next step of the life cycle. So it's combining the core richness of the application workflow. So we believe that combining C3 Generative AI with the applications, the domain awareness, the enterprise-grade platform, is fundamentally changing the human-computer interface for enterprise applications, and it does so for everyone in the organization. The executive, the middle manager, the frontline operator, the analyst. They can all participate in realizing value from enterprise application and driving the organization forward, and they do so at speed and they do so at scale. Further, we're doing so in embedding C3 Generative AI into the product portfolio for our developer and data science experiences, across documentation and tooling, and our developer support forum, the C3 AI community. So I'd like to bring to the stage Jake Whitcomb, who's the Senior Director of Products focused on technology transfer, to show you.
Thanks, Adrian. Last year, we launched a powerful new version of the C3 AI platform. And C3 AI Studio, a comprehensive suite of developer tools for building, deploying, and operating AI applications at speed and scale. Now, we wanted to make it even easier to configure and deploy AI applications. So today, we're excited to share with you new interfaces coming soon to C3 AI Studio, including C3 Generative AI Copilot, powered by a large language model trained extensively on the entire C3 AI platform. C3 Generative AI Copilot provides real-time expert support to the entire team right in their favorite tools. Now, I caught rumor that this is not a full room of data scientists, but notebooks out. I'm going to show you the way. And I promise it'll only take a few minutes. My team was just tasked to deploy C3 AI Reliability to predict unplanned downtime in our critical equipment. So I come to C3 AI Studio, a one-stop shop collaboration tool for my entire team. Here I can manage and monitor my applications and environments, set up releases and build pipelines for my code, and access resources like training, comprehensive documentation, community, our developer support forum, and quick starts and tutorials. Now, these quick starts and tutorials provide the entire C3 application, including the data model, data pipelines, application logic, user interface, artificial intelligence, alerting workflows, and much more. And because they're pre-configured, I only need to configure a few things to set up today. I'll click on the quick start to get going, and I can see that first I'll need to onboard my data, train a few machine learning models, make and store predictions, and then validate my user interface looks good with the predictions made, the data connected, and then I can go on to configure my application more from there. Let's get started. So on application canvas, I have a workbench for each connected layer of my application, from data sources, data modeling, application UI, and artificial intelligence. Now, the first step in my workflow is to onboard data, and I already have 2 years of time series historian data stored in my Google BigQuery data lake, so I'm going to connect that to this initial pipeline to store point measurement data and provide that access to my application. So I'll use a new visual tool for connecting this virtual data lake by selecting first BigQuery, and then I'm going to add a couple credentials, including the data lake name, database URL, and move forward just to validate that I have connection to this data. I'm going to select point measurement from the list of tables available in my remote data lake, and I can see that I have data available. A couple checks, looks good to me. Let's move forward. Now I'll repeat this step for the remaining data pipelines in order to provide full access to data needed for the C3 AI reliability application. And what's great is I can treat this virtual data lake without moving the data, but I can also load data in batch, stream, manually over file upload, or over API. OK, next step is to review my data model and make sure it has access to the data that I just connected. I'll click on Next. And on application canvas, I can see my full foundational data model for the C3 reliability application, including each of the core business concepts, like assets, events, alerts, sensors, and point measurement. The point measurement contains the data that it just connected from my remote data lake. So I'll click on point measurement to validate that I have access to data from this application data model. A couple valid checks of the data points, looks good. Distributions look good. Let's move forward. Now, I've connected data to my data model. Application has access to the data. Next step is to train some models. The models page has the full model lineage, from the source data to the model features to the models themselves and the prediction table that will feed data to my application user interface. And because this model lineage is pre-configured, all I need to do here is plug in the model. Let's get started. C3 AI reliability comes out of the box with several pre-configured model templates. Now, these model templates represent years of R&D and testing. And this will get me up to speed and provide business value much faster. Let's click into the convolutional autoencoder to understand what's under the hood. What I love about this is I can see everything that's composed within this model, from the hyperparameters to the full model architecture. So later, I can use this model, understand how it works, and even extend it. I can use this application user interface to edit this configuration directly and train the model without going to code. But as a data scientist, I prefer using Python on day one and open source libraries that I'm already familiar with. So I'll make my way over to the on-demand Jupyter Lab service and see if I can construct one of these for a baseline model to get my application running. But before I do that, I want to get tips from the community to see what other developers recommend about doing this. So I'll click on community to ask my questions. Now in Community, our developer forum, you can ask any question, and we have channels for platform, for application development, UI development, training, and so much more. And here I can ask my question in an existing channel. I'll create a new post for building a custom model for C3 reliability. Now, what I'll expect is that over the course of the next day, I'll get responses from different developers in the community to answer my question. How can I use open source libraries like scikit-learn or XGBoost to train a model and then use that in the C3 AI reliability application? And can you provide me a code example? I'll post my question. Now, within moments, C3 Generative AI Copilot responds with a specific response tailored to my question. It provides the steps and a code example that's exactly answering what I need. Now, at the bottom, what I love even more is there's links that provide the source truth, and I can go and read more about this at a later time. But this code provides me exactly the steps that I need to get going. And if other developers come in and provide their tips and experiences later, I'll receive a notification, and I can learn from them. Now, let's go train this model by accessing Jupyter Lab and importing these open source libraries. I'll spin up the notebook. Now, in the on-demand Jupyter Lab service, I've pasted in the code, made a couple configurations, plugged in my data. Now, I've done this all using C3 ML pipelines, and what I love about this as a data scientist is I can work directly from these open source libraries and convert that algorithm to a pipe and link that together with pre-processing steps, my features from the C3 reliability application, a scoring metrics to automatically monitor the performance of these models. And I can do that all with very few lines of code. Okay, this all looks good to me. I've visualized the pipeline that I've created, and I can even publish this to the model registry so that it's available to my entire team, just like those pre-built models that come with C3 AI reliability. Now, the only piece that I want to change here is I'm training a single model across all of my assets, and I know my data varies drastically by region. And so I'm going to ask C3 Generative AI Copilot, right embedded in the tool, how can I train a unique version of this model for each location in my data? And let's see what C3 Generative AI Copilot comes back with. In a moment, I get a code example back with a specific model training strategy, a single API call to set location as the grouping parameter. And I can now say, insert this into my notebook, and I'll actually run this cell. What this code is doing is segmenting based on a specific field in my data model across geographic location. And it's going to train 6 different models, and this happens in about that number of seconds. And this is made possible using C3 ML Pipeline's powerful feature, which optimize on the fly the computation and parallelize steps that can be run at the same time. I deploy the trained models, make some predictions, and so that they're available in my application data model, and I can go back to Canvas to view those models. Now, on Canvas, I see the models that were just trained for each location in my data, and I can click in to see the performance of one of them. Let's look at the new model monitoring page to understand how this model is performing over the test period of my data. Okay, so this looks pretty good. Precision and recall are automatically tracked. What I love about C3 Model Ops here is it's automated so much of the process for me. From monitoring to deployment, I can set this up as a champion challenger model and now promote this to my application and work on improving these models moving forward. Now, as a final step, I need to go back to application Canvas, review my user interface, and make sure that I have my data connected, my predictions in place, and now I can work with my team on configuring the rest of the app. So on the user interface canvas, I can now see my data sources linked to the actual pages that come out of the box with the C3 AI reliability application. These are pre-configured, and I have data loaded. It all looks good to me. The final step is to actually launch the application directly from the tool and validate the final user interface. And I'll click to launch the app. And C3 reliability is available. I have alerts being generated, historical cases being loaded, and now I can feel confident that my team can spend time on refining the models and extending this application user interface and application logic to meet the specific needs of my business. Now, C3 AI Studio is available today with new self-serve interfaces coming soon, including C3 Generative AI Copilot, which is available in all of your favorite tools, in Community for everyone, in Jupyter Lab for data scientists, and in C3 Visual Studio Code for application developers. I welcome you to join my colleagues at the AI Marketplace and give it a try. With that, I'll invite my colleague, Adrian Rami, back to the stage.
Okay, thank you, Jake. So I'd like to lastly talk about innovation in the context of application user experiences. This week at Transform, we talked about C3 AI Vision. You heard it from Tom yesterday. It's the next step function change in the utility of enterprise applications to support 3D and interactive experiences and workflows to support geospatial and temporal analyses. We enable these for the use cases where this is going to provide the ability to engage in deep workflows that are otherwise out of reach to the normal enterprise user, where instead of the user going out to the field, you bring the field to the user. And you do this in the context of intelligence analysis. Imagine you're looking at an entire maritime area and trying to identify unauthorized movements. You need to retask a satellite to take a 15-centimeter resolution enhanced optical image. Which one is available to me, and then how am I going to get there? I can see it reroute in near real time and actually take that photo for me. Or we do this in reliability. A maintenance engineer in a remote operations center looks at an alert for all of their global plants, identifies a specific issue with a low-pressure compressor in Beaumont, Texas, zooms right in and gets their maintenance teams to focus on the specific issue. Or in supply network, you're thinking about a supply chain planner who has a blockage in the Suez Canal, and I have a global cargo fleet. How am I going to reroute everything? How do I both visualize the opportunities that I have, the rerouting options, and then get down to a specific port and identify the docking availability? Or you're a law enforcement officer investigating a crime. You're trying to replay all of the events. You know where the crime happened, you know the car that's out for the suspect, and it was found at a license plate reader 8 minutes away. Is it possible that they could have been in those two locations in that time? Let me replay that history instead of having to map it out into the field. And so C3 AI Vision is much more than just a visualization. It's a rich 3D and interactive capability that augments the user experience for rich geospatial and 3D analyses on top of the richness of omnimodal data fusion, enhanced analytics, and machine learning and optimization capabilities. And C3 AI Vision will be available as one flavor in all of our applications as relevant. Supply network risk, reliability, aircraft readiness, contested logistics, and more. And as you also heard, we're doing C3 AI Vision for augmented reality. And this will provide the latest in immersive interactive experiences. And as you heard from Tom, obviously the Apple Vision Pro is going to improve over time. And we think that and many other tools are going to provide new capabilities and experiences for everybody. And so if you haven't already, if you're not among the 120 people that went in the last couple of days, I absolutely invite you to please book a time using this QR code or in the app to go experience the theater for yourself. For those who have seen it, know that this was done by a team in 3 weeks. Just imagine where that's going to go. Lastly, I want to talk about how we create our roadmap. Our roadmap is born out of direct engagement with you, our customers, through meetings, through workshops, through demos, through CSAT surveys, through emails, and we pour over every piece of feedback. And we live to serve our customers for high-value impact use cases with speed and at scale. And we deliver our roadmap features across the supply chain. We've heard you in generative AI. We've heard you in the platform. And so our product team is here. You've heard from them yesterday. You'll hear from them for the rest of the day in the AI marketplace. I encourage you to engage with them, ask questions, learn more about the roadmap, and help steer where we should go next. With that, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of C3 Transform.